Disclaimer. The content presented in this show is intended for entertainment purposes only. All opinions expressed are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of any individuals or organizations mentioned. Statements made about public figures or entities are based on publicly available information and are not intended to harm or defame any person or business. This show relies on fair use of social media posts, which are presented in good faith for the purpose of commentary and criticism. Viewers and listeners are advised to form their own opinions. Point shaving scandal popping up in early 2026. Two sportsbooks going at each other on social media, and a whole lot more coming at you today on Circle Back here on the Circles Off channel, which is part of the Hammer Betting Network and presented by Kalshi. This is a show where we cover the latest and greatest news that comes from gambling Twitter, and sometimes that can be gambling as a whole, which you'll see in a second with our first topic, and we're doing it with your Friday crew. I'm your host here on Circle Back, whether it's Monday at 1 p.m. live or the pre-recorded Friday 8 a.m. version. My name is Jacob Gramegna. I'm a creator and producer here at the Hammer Betting Network. Here's who we have today in the bottom left corner of the screen. It is Mike, aka Mr. PeanutBettor on Twitter. In the bottom right, we have Joey Knish, co-host on Hit the Books, which is the Hammer's NCAA content division. And in the top right, joining us as our fourth for today is Porter of BA Analytics. Porter, how are you doing today? How are you feeling ahead of these topics we got loaded?
I'm doing good. I think I got lucky to be on an episode with the biggest sports scandal since, I don't know, 1994 or Tim Donahue.
It's potential that is the case. The 1994 scandal in reference is the Arizona State point shaving scandal with players like Hedrick Smith and Isaac Burton, but this one, another one, has popped up here to start 2026, as I mentioned. So let's break down what is going on here. Pat Ford on Twitter, at by Pat Ford, said, breaking, federal investigators today are following sports bribery and wire fraud charges against 20 people in relation to game fixing, point shaving, and performance manipulation in college basketball. Among them are gamblers Shane Hennon, Marvis Fairley, and several former players. And just to kind of go through here, this is alleged to have been involved in China's CBA and NCAA Division I games. Former NBA player Antonio Blakeney was also one of the people charged, alleging he had both participated in the scheme and also afterwards helped recruit others. This is a former Chicago Bulls player that we are talking about here. Lots of people involved. Players were reportedly receiving tens of thousands of dollars, but it's reported that there was hundreds of thousands of dollars being bet into these markets, which we'll discuss how on earth you can even get that much down on markets like this. Pablo Torre provided an update here saying that Shane Hedden texted a co-schemer, quote, nothing guaranteed in this world but death, taxes, and Chinese basketball. I really like that quote and wanted to feature it. And an old panelist here on the show, Jeff Nadeau, talked a lot about Shane Hennon here. Sugar Shane Hennon, this is the fourth time he's been involved in indictment in the last 1.5 years. He was also involved in the one involving Chauncey Billups in the recent NBA scandal that went down a few months ago. So lots of familiar faces, lots of new faces as well in this one, but pretty crazy story to kick us off here. I want to go first of all to you, Knish. I'm just wondering if there's anybody involved in this that when you see their name, is it somebody you recognize?
No, I mean, I would. I don't know if I'd answer that. Either way, if you wanted me to give you another one.
Fair enough.
But I mean, I got a few takes on this, and the first one is, this seems like something when you get it to this scale that it's generally impossible to get away with. Like at some point, the investigation, like when you're betting the amount of money that they were trying to get on certain games, on Chinese basketball, on NCAA extra games, it's going, like, maybe, I don't know, 20 years ago, it wouldn't have been it. But like in today's environment, when you've seen what would happen with like some of the NBA player prop scandals and stuff, you're just like, to get it at this. My only theory on this is in the new political climate, maybe you've seen some of the stuff that happens, in the the prediction market realm. Maybe people just thought that nobody can get you can get away with it now. But in you have this level, I think there's an interest. There's something that grabs the headlines when it's sports betting. And this type of you kind of go back to the old school, like the mafia, people rigging games and stuff. It also fits the narrative that people love to do in the public right now. Like, the game was rigged, it was fixed. So it's just one of those that gets so many eyeballs. With that said, my last point would probably be, there's a part of me that respects it. There's a lot of things to be able to do it at this scale and make the logistics work. I don't think I'm not saying you get away with it, but to do, it takes, you gotta be good at something in life. And so, I'll tip my cap.
What is impressive, I think what is impressive, really impressive about this is the fact that, this is Porter, you mentioned the top before we started recording that there was $400,000 involved in some of these markets. Before we go to you, Porter, I want to go to Mike. You were laughing a bit there. What would be the process of even getting down at this scale for events like this, CBA and these lower scale Division I basketball games?
First, I'd like to say, with all the fancy SGPs, I'm going to pull myself early. I want you to bet all the unders, correlated, throwing a first pitch in the ground. It's nice that we get back to the basics, the roots of rigging sports in this country, back to the really rigging the actual event in place. It's nice to see some old school still exist in this country. But to getting that down, it seems like, and I haven't read all the specifics of it or the details, but it seems like to me that this was the first – I would say inside job that seemed to have some sophisticated actors behind the scene. From what I read, it looks like there were some parlays and stuff involved in it, and they were doing it in a way beyond that wasn't the Tim Donahue just bet on the game for $20,000 to the world's bookie and make it as obvious as possible. This one looks like it had a level of sophistication, which probably is what allowed it to scale to the level it did before it got caught. So I think this one is – those other issues that we've seen so far, don't get me wrong, you don't want guys pulling themselves early. It's obviously an issue for all those leagues if we have something like that. But this is the first one where it's this could affect the future of the sport, where if you have guys who are rigging games, that's way different to me in a way that rigging a first pitch is not.
Okay, interesting take there. So I mentioned, Porter, the ASU example from 1994. In those examples, ASU were favored by, let's say, 11 points. They would still be winning a lot of these games, but the point shaving was they wouldn't be covering, and that's where the bets would come in. According to what we're hearing about this specific example here, they were targeting underdog teams and specifically financially vulnerable players on these underdog teams. So it was teams that were losing, and the teammates were helping them lose by more. But you talked about the magnitude of an event like this, so why don't you just give us all of your thoughts, Porter?
Yeah, so I just want to hop on wow, that's some beautiful scaling. Looking at some of these numbers, a lot of people joke they bet big, they do this, they do that. To figure out how to bet $400K on NCAA beat extras first half bets, that's something else. That's skills. So like Mr. Peanut said, this is some sophistication, and they keep talking about limiting props to really small bet sizes, because you can rig it. But now what? Are we going to come to the forefront in society and say, well, that's it. We can't bet big on games. Even games are starting to be rigged. I do want to point that some of these bets, though, there were some spots where they were saying $400,000 were bet. And you'll see a lot of content guys that don't really sports bet kind of misconstrue what that means. They weren't betting $400,000 on minus 110. There were some spots on these bets where it's first half the game was -7, but they were betting the money line. So they were betting $400K to win $100K. So there's a little bit difference there. But overall, the scale and magnitude of this should be one of the biggest stories that has been around in a long, long time. And I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of the, sports betting, we got to ban it. This is happening because betting's being allowed. Rest assured, those ASU, if you remember the story, they were betting on not just like Vegas lines. They were betting with bookies and offshores. So the only reason it's a double-edged sword. The only reason you were able to get so much is they were also able to bet on legals, it seems. But that's how it got caught. It's very difficult to catch this magnitude, this amount of games, if it's all being bet on bookies. So really, like, the scandals are being brought to the forefront because there's some good whatever they're doing on the back ends at these books, and they were able to report it. Otherwise, you would never have even known about it. So for all this, let's ban it. Let's limit this. This doesn't really get stopped by, getting rid of these. What are you going to do now? Get rid of these markets? They're now rigging real games. It's not just a guy throwing a pitch. So I think like this will get some weird push of why sports betting again is bad. You're going to get that like fervent right side trying to again be like, hey, look, they're cheating. And, the audience that loves to claim games are rigged. But in reality, you're being protected by this coming to light. So, for the audience, I mean, you're going to hear a ton of negativity out of this, but I don't think it's as bad as, in terms of like for sports as people pretend it to be. It's just people that don't really understand how sports betting works.
Okay, so you already answered. I was going to ask a follow-up question on what the reaction is going to be to something like this. So you already answered it there. Let's go to Knish. We'll go back on, and I'll ask my follow-up question, which is, how are people going to treat this? Like, is this going to require action? Are people going to claim it requires action? But are you on the side with Porter, where because we have regulation, where we can spot this a lot better than if we didn't?
I'm on the side. I'm worried that like the public political messaging is not going to be that. So yeah. I agree with you that like 100% that this getting caught is actually, a positive, a good indicator. But I think you're going to have the public message be like, games are fixed. Can't believe this. You'll have your people that are just if you're in the anti-sports betting camp, this is just, crack for you. You're like, oh my God, everything's tainted. This is bad.
This is like Dustin Gooker seeing a Kalshi scandal.
Oh yeah, that's right. With the that like, you know what I'm saying? Where like if that's your bag or that's the narrative you want to push, this is great. This is like, oh my God, everything. And so it escalates into a sense of like there's already a decent faction of sports betting is bad people out there. And this then gets lamented into helping amplify those points around like, well, now the games are fixed. Now we can't trust the outcomes. Now we got college kids that are on that. When in actuality, again, I'm biased. The show's biased. The people on this panel are biased. Do I think there needs to be some drastic action taken to come out of this? No. If anything, as Porter was saying, it kind of is like the system works, but I don't think that's how most people are going to see it.
I mean, think about this. From 1994 to 2007, between ASU and Tim Donahue, people really think there were 0 fixed games.
Right.
From 2007 until 2025, that's almost 20 years. There were no stories about this. Why do people think there were no stories? Because there are no regulatory bodies that were really looking at this. People are all betting offshore. People are all betting at books. But like Knish said, none of that matters. This is crack for anti-gambling. This is going to be sin tax is fine. Gamblers, that 90% tax, forget those people. This is just going to be used fuel for fire.
I think it's interesting that the first scandals when we talk about MP are Porter Jr. and Rozier and the guys throwing the pitches, those you could say actually were a result of legalization. Those kind of SGP bets, you weren't really betting those offshore at bookies previously. This is going to be a situation where actually regulation has been good. This has been a chance where regulation helps catch the guys at harm. But because of the scale of it and because everybody's already made up their minds, it won't be perceived that way. So even though this is probably the worst example to point to regulation is bad, it will still be used because of the scale of it.
Okay, so next question on this is, in the case of Jonte Porter, who you mentioned there, Mike, he was like mid six figs NBA contract there. He was playing like pretty well for the Raptors. I think he had a good chance to earn a guaranteed deal next season, and if not with the Raptors, somewhere else, like $1 million plus in a contract. In those instances, you kind of think, this guy threw away so much money. How could he be so stupid? In cases like this, these are oftentimes financially troubled individuals. They're not getting paid to play at these lower tier schools. And the prospect of making $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, which were numbers mentioned in some of the articles, is a humongous deal. That changes potentially their livelihood for the next couple of years or for the duration of their stay in college. So what is there out there that is going to prevent these players from getting involved in something like this? Because in the NBA, the financial gain is there to stay in the NBA. College, that doesn't exist. What do you think to that, Porter?
I love that question. That's the classic, like, how do you fix a solution? And people hate it when they answer there's no fix. There's no fix to this stuff. But people and regulatory bodies, government officials, they love to say that they have the answer. So this is like the go-to of like, hey, I got a solution for you. You don't like gambling? I'll fix it for you. Let's regulate the situation. I can fix the situation. But sometimes there really aren't too many fixes. You can maybe like subdue this. Again, we kind of talked about what the fix is. Legalized betting fixes this, because then there's reports on the back end. They send it to the FBI. The FBI figures out how find people after 2.5 years pretending to build an investigation, I think is why it took so long. And then they say, this is, we caught this. But I don't think there are great fixes. There are like band-aids that you can put.
No, this is like the war on drugs, like all over again, where when you have a vice that is addictive and you have the opportunity to sell people that vice at a very low cost for sums of money, there is no amount of punishment or regulation you can dole out that will ever stop people on both sides of this from wanting their fix or for wanting their opportunity. That's just like livelihood. Like, why do you think like selling, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you can go outside, people, like, there's been, no matter the punishments, there's always going to be people. I mean, there's been prohibition in this country. There's been bans on before legalization. Was nobody betting around here? Like, or is that the different? There's just no, and that's not, and everybody always wants this poor to say, people want a solution. People want to fix. People want to promise. At the end of the day, when you have something that's very addictive that people want to do and they have the opportunity to make a lot of money, those things are always going to come together regardless of efforts.
And to what Jacob said about Michael Porter Jr., I will say that not Michael Porter Jr. That'd be a much bigger deal.
Yeah.
He had the opportunity cost of this NBA contract. For these players, there is the opportunity cost of you go to jail for 10 years. I mean, what's 10 years of your life worth if you have that? So I think it goes even beyond, like, we try to think very logically of why would you risk X for Y? It makes no sense to do that. But a lot of times, like with Terry Rozier, there was no reason to risk it. You can't come up with a financial reason. Sometimes there's just people see an opportunity and they have to hit it. It's like, in Rounders, Worm has to do whatever he has to do to cheat the game. It's like guys see a spot and they want to win on it. So they're going to rig it, even if it doesn't make sense for them, with the risk at hand.
So to just playing devil's advocate, like to what Knish was saying, somebody's argument would be like, then why does gambling need to exist? If we cannot prevent it, then should we not just get rid of it?
And alcohol and drugs. And, people drive and kill people also.
It's prohibition. Why can't we get rid of gambling? I mean, why can't we get rid of, if we could get rid of heroin, that would be a great start, but we can't. So there's no way. So if you have to work within the restraints that you have as a society, and we can't get rid of gambling. Honestly, if we could, maybe it would be good overall, but that's not possible. So why don't you legalize it and regulate it to the best of your ability?
Okay.
Yeah, and I think when you have people like, I like Porter's point of view there. There wasn't a ton of public scandals for 15 years where everything was on. But if you dig into like things that were happening on the Challenger Tour in tennis, or some of the things that didn't make it very mainstream per se, where it's that exact scenario of you had people that were at the, just grinding out there, trying to survive. And then if you get offered, I mean, if you're a challenger and you're making, barely enough to go on, like to go to your next events, and you're getting up there in age and maybe the ATP money isn't coming, if someone comes to you with $30,000, $50,000, $100,000, I mean, that goes across it'd be the return would be like well, do we get rid of Challenger? Do we get rid of AAA baseball? Do we get rid of any sport it's not feasible because all those things feed major sports. So even though this was happening in Chinese basketball and lower level NCAA, there's an element like you can't just cut off the bottom or the middle tier leagues and only have the upper tier. Like, it doesn't work like that. There has to be that opportunity to then like level up for people to even want to like financially participate in these things or for these things to even exist. So the same method applies where like you can't get rid of gambling. You just have to moderate it as well as possible. You can't get rid of like any league that's not the upper like A tier league and expect sports to still thrive and exist.
Right. Those had scandals anyway.
How much do you guys think that this being CBB teams that nobody has heard of helps, kind of reduce the noise on it, as opposed to like if this happened to a team that somebody is going to see often, it becomes so much bigger to me. Like if it happened to Arizona State, like you mentioned, or if it happened in college football, it would be a crazy deal. How much do you think like maybe that this, the case for it not being as big of a deal as we think at this point would be it's CBB teams that nobody ever watches, nobody cares. It kind of gets lost in the shuffle, especially while we're in, honestly, like a busy sports season probably affects that, sadly.
What do you answer? I don't have an answer. I was hoping one of you would answer.
And I would say I think my answer would be that I think in today's world where there's been this over the last year or so, maybe in the last few years, swoon of people like everything's fixed, that this story now hits like a fucking truck where when it comes out or you see it and it's like it gravitates a lot more to like the public norm. And so maybe, I don't know. I get what you're saying.
I think this is the tip of the iceberg. We just got to be on an episode where we're real early. This is just the beginning. This is going to be a big deal.
Okay. Interesting. Lots of differing opinions here. We'd love to hear your opinion. If you're watching right now, especially on YouTube, get to the YouTube comment section. Give your thoughts on this, your opinion on anything we've discussed so far on the show, anything we will discuss on this show today. We love to hear the feedback. We love to read the comments and love to engage with the audience. You can also hit us up on Twitter at CirclesOffHQ as well to jump in on some additional conversation. While you're down in the comment section on YouTube, though, make sure you have hit the like button as a reminder and make sure you subscribe to the channel as well for all the content we're pumping out here on Circles Off. All right, we're going to keep it moving on this show. We're going to talk about this celebrity partnership, really switching gears to this topic here. Kalshi revealed that they have signed two-time major champion Bryson DeChambeau as their first athlete and ambassador, and they're going to be starting to integrate Kalshi market to his audience of millions in an industry-first partnership. So I imagine this will include we've seen markets involving him where he wants to break 60 or whatever on a public golf course, or I don't know if this is going to be what he's trying to hit, like a hole-in-one over his mansion, something like that. Lots of unique markets that could come out of something like this, and I guess it was only natural, the progression here for a brand like Kalshi to get involved with celebrity endorsements, and it feels like, speaking of tip the other, maybe this could be the start of something similar. Mike, as someone who likes to dabble in these unique markets, in things like this, do you feel like something like this is good for the industry?
Yeah, I think if you were Kalshi and I unfortunately got to it too late, but I saw there was like the Battle of the Sexes tennis match where it was Kyrgios versus whoever. And if you start to, there's no reason that the only sporting events have to be the leagues that currently exist. And the reason that those are the case right now is because, there's limited financial opportunity to have a one-time event that gets ended and it's a lot of setup and everything like that. If you have these big organizations that can get, other means of financial gain from it rather than just putting it on one channel randomly where people have to hope to find it, maybe there's a chance that this starts to create more like piecemeal random events that people kind of are sponsored by either prediction markets or gambling companies where they kind of like the match or whatever in golf, where it's more Jake Paulification of these events where we get random things occurring because, basically people want to put their opinion in those situations rather than an NBA game on Tuesday. So possibly that this is kind of the start of something where they kind of bring it to the forefront. Also possible that nobody ends up betting it. It doesn't help at all. So I think it could go like one of two ways. It could really be something that catches on, or it could be, not a big deal. In a year, I would sound like an idiot for saying that even.
Okay, interesting. Knish, to you, what's your thoughts on this?
I mean, I think the best way in like modern times to get any interest to your whatever you're doing, your event, is like allow people to bet on it. Like when we were in COVID and I was doing push-ups on the screen that I fell just short. What was the thing that people really drew to? Is that you could bet like a market was created. We were 5 years ahead of time. So now, in today's day and age, we'd be on Kalshi. This would have 100,000 in volume, and it's like and it works too. It's both. It's like you rub each other's back, right? Because on DeChambeau, he's got his YouTube channel. He's getting paid for the sponsorship. It grows the brain. It grows eyes. And at the same time, it tells you, it gets market. It gets people that. So this seemed like this is like the era of you can bet on everything, which I know there's people out there that, I don't know about it. But I don't know. I kind of lean into it. I love it. And it definitely – there's also I think these are I've heard PB say this before. These are kind of the fun things to really dig into and have an opinion on, right? Where I'm going to watch, DeChambeau's going to hit a drive over his house. I'm going to be on Google Earth seeing how big his house is, how high it is, that type of stuff. That it's more fun than I made a number for X college basketball game for the millionth time. It's got a little bit of a different flair, variety to it that I think is fun.
Keeps the gears turning, makes you think a little bit. You mentioned something there with the push-ups thing that I actually find really interesting, because I remember, you go back a year to when boxing was a huge thing on gambling Twitter, people were boxing each other, people were betting on that. Even I think back to the WPL event that Jeff Feinberg, Rob Pizzola, Andy Molitor, the mini putt tournament, they played against each other, and some of the issues was they just couldn't offer really heavy limits on that. Well, we could eliminate that by shifting things like this over to prediction markets. Maybe this will be the first of many. Finally, over to you, Porter. Your thoughts on this?
It's funny for the anti-betting crowd. It's like betting gives you an ability to not just say something, in the air, and you're just, you have no actual spine, no explanation for why something's happening. When you put money on something, it fortifies your belief. So it allows you to express what you think about something monetarily, but it allows you to actually be adamant, to actually believe. So I kind of think this is almost like a cheat code, skipping what maybe a 3x3 basketball league that spent millions of dollars, or I forget the names of all these kind of leagues that are trying to grow and create. Right, Big Three. Where here now it's kind of you're giving people what they want almost instantaneously, like the Karagos matchup or the Jake Paul boxing. I know that's boxing, but it kind of all of a sudden allows kind of a shortcut to try to bring forward stuff that's entertaining to the fans. So there is an ability to now put opinions, how I like to say it, behind, different types of sporting events that people enjoy watching. So this is kind of taking it like a fast track on being able to enjoy more new things. And who knows, maybe that means other markets that have been traditionally big take a decline, actually. Maybe the pie can't really sustain growth. I know Kalshi and all these companies think it can. So this will be interesting to see if a lot of new things pop up, if it takes away from a slice of something else.
As always, if you do want to get involved with any markets that we bring up on the show or anything involved with Kalshi, you can do so by scanning the QR code on screen or by heading to the link in the description at any point during this episode of Circle Back. Once again, thank you so much to Kalshi for being the presenting sponsor here on the channel. We're going to move into the next conversation, which is on the fair play that Fanatics book offers, and has really used this as a tool to try and go head-to-head with FanDuel on Twitter. I just find it so interesting that sportsbooks, social media teams are going at each other. It's mostly one side on the side of Fanatics because they offer their fair play thing where if a player exits a game through injury, they will void your bet, or I've seen books that refund it as a bonus bet. But FanDuel had something like this in place where the player got injured in the first quarter of a football game, they would void the bet. But that's since gone away as we get into the NFL playoffs. So this is where Fanatics has been able to really attack them, saying fair play activated, honoring all player prop bets impacted by George Kittle's second quarter injury. Person like Ghetto Gronk, the Twitter account, says FanDuel about to lose every customer after this, and puts a tombstone with FanDuel Bet Protect 2025 to 2025. Before I get your opinions, I thought I can only laugh at Jared Smith, who said this. Here's the main issue I have with the bet protection crap that books are offering if the player gets hurt. You're enabling an entire generation of young gamblers to believe if something doesn't go your way, you will get bailed out, essentially stripping them of any lesson in overcoming the random challenges and adversity life throws at you on a daily basis. Dan Abrams, who's been interviewed on this channel before, says, man, I wish FanDuel was around when I was under 21 and a half to teach me about adulting. So, I mean, Jared Smith, I think the base of his point is good. I think the wording of it is not good. He says, if you're wondering why testosterone levels in this country are dropping at an alarming rate and why men are too scared to go up to it in public anymore, this is the type of program that creates a weak mindset. I mean, I'm going to go a little extreme.
You think that that's a good take? That's your take? Is you think?
I think he's approaching it.
Dropping.
No, he's obviously gone to like an extreme level that is completely unnecessary. But I think his take that the bet protection stuff is bad, that makes sense. The way he words it here and the way he frames it, obviously, I personally do not agree with. But on the bet protection stuff that we have here, I find it interesting that FanDuel had rolled this out and are now scaling it back. And I just find it interesting that Fanatics is using this to target them and try to get customers away from them. So I'll go to you, Knish, first on this one again. I kind of want your thoughts on whether you think this is providing a real meaningful piece of marketing for Fanatics. Do you think that there is a noticeable uptick in customers because of this?
So I'll actually give the Monday show a little credit on that. When they were discussing the DraftKings thing with the pick six, there was the implication that if that happened to you, that's a deal breaker in terms of you ever using that book again, right? Like, I'm done, I'm out. Right. Your account probably banned anyway, but even if you didn't give them like that, I'm never working with that company again. This, I don't think, is the same level of like, oh, if FanDuel doesn't offer bet protection, am I not gonna bet any, bet props there anymore? I will say, begrudgingly, because of the way Fanatics operates, for the type of customer that they're actually trying to acquire, which is like the squarest of the square, I guess it makes some sense from but do I think this actually is going to have a ton of shift in terms of people like, just look at the user experience on FanDuel versus Fanatics on the app, right? Like, am I going to switch over if I'm only a one book guy because one place doesn't have bet protection? I don't know. I would need like a list of like an example of like, here's 1,000 people that did it. I don't see it.
Okay. How about you, Mike? What do you think?
Yeah, I have to agree with Jacob and Jared Smith that I think that prop bets in general maybe are ruining the testosterone in this country. Back in the 90s, you took a straight bet or you made maybe the total, and even that was considered feminine back in my day. But I think that in seriousness, the reason people don't want bet protect is because we want to receive slightly higher percentage of payout on a guy when they go over versus another time. Like, this idea that there's some kind of moral reasoning behind it, to me, is insane. But at the same time, like, I don't think it's something that if I was the leader, say I'm FanDuel, I would do. But if I was someone like Fanatics, you go ahead and take your shot here. Like, this is your chance to acquire customers. You can't, if you are in third place, you can't act like you're in first place. And Fanatics might be in fourth or fifth place. So, like, when you're behind like them, you need to take some shots here in order to try to get customers and build your base that way. The UI that they have isn't going to improve unless they get customers. What's one way to get customers is by offering something FanDuel doesn't. So you have to offer something different if you're them. If you play the same game as FanDuel, you're going to lose, essentially. So it's similar to like in college football. Why do Navy and Army run the triple option? Because they have to, and they can't run what Alabama's running because they'll get murdered by them. So Fanatics, it makes sense. For FanDuel, it makes sense not to have it. I'm sure we'll see people go back and forth and argue about it, but the morality of it to me is insane. Like, we're talking about it's gambling. Like, we can chill out on the lessons for everyone.
You're always good at finding metaphors. I like that one about Army and Navy against Alabama. Porter, how about you? What are your thoughts?
All right, I'm going to say some maybe like slightly contradictory takes because why not?
Okay.
So
that's what you're here
obviously,
for.
yeah, obviously Fanatics is spitting in their customer's face while the customer doesn't know that, hey, we're offering you this because we actually limit and ban everyone. But now I'm going to go to the other side. I think FanDuel started offering this, and I'm just going to say from firsthand experience, FanDuel is limiting like crazy now too. I hate this thing that's happening on a lot of shows where people keep talking about how good FanDuel is. And I can tell you it's not as good as it used to be. They're downtrending. And I actually think you're going to start seeing some impact from stuff like this. And I bet you we're going to have a trend, I don't know how long, 5-6 months from now, when a few more sharps, pseudo sharps start realizing FanDuel's not as great as it used to be. Now, I'm not saying Fanatics is the solution because they're basically the worst there is out there. You can bet $5 there if you know how to tie your shoe. So it's like there's pros, but I think this story we're going to have on Circle Back sound a little bit different in 6 months from now.
Okay, interesting. I like you always bring contrarian takes, which is you bring a different perspective to the show, which I always find interesting. But I think what Fanatics is doing that is success. I think this is really like, as a marketing team, this has to be considered a success when you have your customers essentially beating your own drum for you, where they are riding for you against FanDuel in this instance. Like, it's one thing for some sports books will just continue to big themselves up on social media, but to have your customers do it for you, that is something that is probably a lot more difficult to achieve, and it's something that Fanatics is able to do here. Whether that, it's a good enough product that warrants that, certainly that's up for debate, but from a marketing stance, it has to be considered a success.
Mr. Peanut Butter covered it pretty well, but behind the fact that, like, basically when you're a big dog, you just got to do something different. When you're like a 20-point underdog, when you're a huge underdog, you can't just try to play a team straight up. That applies to sports, and that applies to marketing.
It's just a wonder to me why we still haven't had the bet insurance. Like, you could pay a bit more to have the injury insurance. I still understand why a book doesn't offer that. We have like insurance if your team is up, if like a basketball team's up by 25, your money line gets paid out whether they win or not, even if the other team comes back. We don't have injury insurance, which you can get, which again, it's a little bit strange.
The money line insurance, I actually think, is something different to the fact that that's just to churn the money in the account even faster. So if the game's over, they're going to pay you out anyway.
You know what?
They get it back to you before the next game starts. So it's not even like it's even more insidious than you think.
I feel really dumb admitting this, but I didn't think about it like that. That is so obvious.
You shouldn't think about that. That's for fish.
I mean, I guess. I mean, when it happens, I think, fuck, they lost, and then how did they lose this game? And then I go, oh, the money's still. I didn't think about it like I can start betting again right away, which is actually probably what it's for. That's good insight there.
When
I feel dumb not thinking
MPD
about
was just starting betting, was still in his rec days. He bet on Luka Doncic to win Rookie of the Year, and they paid me out in February. And I thought, what a nice company this company is. And then later on, I realized they were just like, get this moron his money back so we can take it. Like,
right, exactly. All right, we're gonna keep going with the show, get into the next topic in just a moment. Before we do, let's hear about the Discord we have here at the Hammer Betting Network. We know the Hammer is truly like a family. Familiar faces, inside jokes, and the one person that everyone likes picking on. Well, here's your chance to continue the conversation. Join our new Hammer Discord, a chance for us to discuss all the games and news, share our favorite bets, and interact with your favorite Hammer creators. Discord.gg/hammer to join now, or visit a link in the description. Next up, we have a conversation that was sparked by Jeff Benson of Circa. It was this conversation that initially was this tweet from @DraftCheat, who said, legalized sports betting needs only one change. Same limits for all players on all bets to get a license to operate. As it stands now, the game is literally rigged. Can lose everything, but if you're any good, you'll be limited. That has to change. Jeff Benson posted the meme of the man defiantly standing amongst the crowd saying, I used to believe this too, I no longer do. Dustin Willis asked what changed your mind, and he said, working the industry for 15 years, everyone having the same limit is a pipe dream and totally unsustainable. Books have to make money. That's the reality of it. If universal limits exist, pricing is worse, menus are smaller, and the industry eventually goes to zero. The reply, what a sellout take. No one should be limited because they actually win. Enough people lose to where you shouldn't have to limit the 1% that wins. And Jeff Bennett said, limiting winners is good for the winners. Golden Pants quote tweeted this and said, there are basically 2 stages of your life as an advantage sports bettor. Stage 1, you don't realize this, that limits are good for winners. Stage 2, you understand this, understand why you're able to make lots of money. Parentheses, it's not because you can see colors on an odd screen. So this reminds me a lot of an episode of Life of a Capper we did on this channel, where I interviewed a variety of sports bettors, such as Mike and Porter, who you see on screen here. Knish didn't return my call on that one, but that's okay. Everyone involved in that, when I asked them, should there be universal limits, every single professional sports bettor said no. So naturally, I feel like we're going to have similar takes here. But Porter, you wanted to open on this one, so why don't you give your thoughts?
Yeah, so I was going to mention that interview. And I believe while I was watching that interview, every single person was hesitant to say that answer. And the truth is basically the only reason most people that are winners win is because of who the competition is. The fact that they limit just instantly means that the market will not be as efficient. If they didn't limit, the market would become very, very efficient. Even if liquidity went up, all you would actually see then are bigger and smarter players coming into the industry. And I promise you, even to the listeners of this show who are pretty advanced and to other winners out there, there are exceptions. They're few and far between. Usually they could probably be more successful somewhere else because of the liquidity issue. But it is guaranteed that almost 99% of the people listening to this show would not be winners at all if there were universal limits, because the market would become impossible to win at. And it's really just that simple. The skill in sports betting, most people think it's opening up a model, clicking some buttons and winning. And there are just so many other components that are required to win at scale, to make, depends what each person thinks of life-changing money. But there are so many other skills that if it was just turn your laptop, program something, click a winner, nobody would be a winner, because the real big boys, the real smart people with crazy PhD degrees and who knows what, Nobel laureates in economics, if the market got big enough, you guys are not beating them. It's as simple as that.
Not to overly self-promote or anything, but we had an episode on this show, on this channel as well. We did an interview with Calvin and Hobo, who said that all these hurdles that sportsbook provide, when people get frustrated, upset by them, he likes them because just another hurdle that maybe another winning bettor is not willing to go over in order to get their bets in, which leaves more opportunity in the market. I think we do good content here, so I have to plug it. Mike, you agreed when I interviewed you at Bet Bash all the way back in the previous summer. So what are your sentiments now?
I'll say universal limits, no. That's like, they wouldn't be able to do that, and operate, just because you'd have to make the number pretty large, so the menu would really go down. If you offered a minimum limit, I do think that people have started to kind of fear monger into like, oh, well, you'd have to be sides and totals only. Jared Smith would get, all the men in the world would have testosterone again, and like it would all be, very shrunken down. They just have to make money off it for it to make sense for them to offer. So I do think that sometimes we overblow, how hard it would be if they had, say they put up, player props for a nickel and you had to bet it into that. Like, I do think that those kind of talks are overrated and how much it would affect the industry. But in general, yeah, no, it's going to always be any kind of things that make it tougher to scale are going to be that friction that allows people to operate not at scale. So you want things to be able to scale to a point, but not to a point where it scales past your ability to earn off of it. So it's a balance. It's a tricky game, but yeah, that's my general thoughts.
All right, and finally, Knish, didn't catch you at Bet Bash for the interview, so a blank slate to hear what you have to say.
I don't remember you really. Maybe did we actually discuss that? I ignored it.
To be honest, it's possible that I just immediately thought there's no fucking way he's gonna do it. I'm not gonna bother.
That's fair. I gotta say, I think Porter and PB kind of captured this one pretty good. The only thing I would say is I do think maybe not even a minimum limit. I do like the fact when something is like my number one hatred is the submittal that, I mean, I'll just say DraftKings uses this where I'd rather have the FanDuel point of like, if I type in a few numbers and then I can see what the actual limit is before I submit it versus going to the, review of death and them coming back with $3.23. Yeah. So that would be my only change, is that I would like to see whatever your limit is for that account, your stake factored account, posted before before you submit a bet. In terms of global limits, I think it's a little pie in the sky. That sounds like a good idea that our other two panelists kind of shot down why it's not.
Also, I don't think there's any such thing as allowing a nickel, by the way. If you allow a nickel, then a person has 7 accounts and they're betting 3,500. There's no such thing. It's not a real limit. It's just inventing stuff. At least if you notify the user how much he can bet on his account, at least it sets their mind of some kind of acceptance beforehand than just a guessing game that you throw up in the air. Hey, what's going to happen today? Oh, and by the way, it could literally be the same game, the same market, the same time, and you'll get a different limit. It's insane.
Sure, but I will say for the nickel thing, at least if you're the trader, you then, you have the opportunity to adjust your line accordingly based on the information that's coming in. It's you put it up for a nickel and then every bet that you get is another piece of information you can adjust. Now, if you're submitting them all at the same time or something, maybe they can do change of, that's actually a break of house rules. That's different than, if they're being bet at different places or whatever, things like that. So again, I'm not saying that I even want this instituted. I just think that the idea that nobody could offer, $1,000 limit and survive is kind of beyond. Circa is probably the prime example, I think, there where they're offering, and yes, their offering is small, but it's hard to tell. It's kind of hard to tell how much of that is them being a logo shop in Indiana, not having the budget of FanDuel, and how much of that is they get adverse selection in the bad way, in that they're not getting the same rec customers that would, allow them to kind of help some. Right.
You're explaining why you just explain why it doesn't work, because then you don't get rec customers. You're getting a certain type of customer when you're allowing these things.
I understand. Sorry, if there's universal limits, then you wouldn't have that adverse selection where you're not getting rec customers. You would get, by definition, the rec customers have to go to a place where it has those limits.
Yeah, so somehow all the books come together from some government agency that tells each book you have to offer XYZ dollars.
That was the original tweet, I think.
That's impossible.
So on that video where I asked, where I interviewed everyone and asked them this question, I think the most anti-limits answer was from Captain Jack, who said that there shouldn't be universal limits, but for a sports book to be able to offer, let's say, somebody $10,000, they have to offer minimum $1,000 for somebody else. So if you're going to charge the most squares better this much, 10% of that needs to be allocated to somebody who does know what they're doing in order for you to be able to do that. Is that something you guys would support, or do you think where we're at right now is the best way to go about it, or close to it, I suppose?
I don't think that regulating limits is within the government's job. I'm not saying that it would be the death of the industry, but I don't think that the government should be involved in making sure that sharp bettors get their fill.
Yeah, and maybe, by the way, with new tools at people's disposal, exchanges to bet, maybe sportsbooks, and maybe this will require a stock market hit to them, might have to make some changes, right, to stay competitive, or disappear like other, sports books that have existed in the past that aren't around today.
Okay, we're going to get into the comments from the previous week's episode now. As always, I said earlier, if you have something you want to say, have an opinion you want us to see, or want to bring up anything for general discussion, please put something in the comment section down below. While you're down there, make sure you've hit the like button and you're subscribed here on Circles Off. If you're listening to podcast form, maybe rate and review 5 stars over there. 2 comments to feature on from last week's episode, First of all, we had Bucket Lift, who said, "Great show, guys. You never disappoint." Thank you. Keep it up. Joey had a great description of an engineer coming home at night to do this. And this was when Knish, it was the Harala Bob segment where he said essentially don't bet. But you said somebody like an engineer comes home from work and grinds out arbs and live bets. You're never going to tell somebody not to do that. This person says, I was able to have success originating doing this exact thing after work. I will say that if you learn to originate even by recreating something from a book, you might be surprised how well it performs, at least against openers anyway. It also provides a good foundation for any top-down type activity you might get into. Also, why don't we start with you, Mike? It's you kind of nodding along to this one. Anything on this comment from you?
Yeah, great example of you start with origination, then you move your way into finding a way, or you start with, like some top-down stuff, then you do some origination. How can I get to the number that they're getting to? How can I kind of recreate it? Look for a few flaws and then kind of work your way up. I think that's like the prime example of how you would want someone to kind of get into this side business is do it just the way that guy's doing it, sounds like.
And Knish, any reaction from you to comment?
I mean, I appreciate the dap up. So I like this guy. Let's send him some swag. But no, I mean, I think that I agree. Like, that's kind of how you got to start it out. And back there was a day when Joey K did some, origination, and it was starting with, college football openers and that, where it's like people think, I got to go after, the cream of the crop there, where, if you start trying to originate, I don't know, a reign of Ukrainian soccer or something that like you really start low, and it does give you a feel for, hey, maybe I have the potential to, beat this market or scale up eventually. But regardless, I think the learning of doing it just gives you some semblance of a better understanding of how markets work, how numbers work, all that stuff. So yeah, I think it's a great, hey, you're not going to regret doing it. I'll say that, even if you don't, maybe come across endless riches, the learning is worth the effort.
And Porter, the conversation we had last week was essentially like, would you tell someone to not even bother starting to bet because so much of the profits you could have had previously are dried up at this point? Just in general on that conversation, do you have anything to add?
I just wanted to start. It's probably pretty difficult to play soccer in Ukraine right now, but
I wonder if
it's still operate, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
I think it is.
Yeah. No, I mean, sports betting is a journey. So however sounds like a journey that makes sense. But yeah, look, every industry has the like easy time and then things get harder. So in general, you never hear about the people who like started and failed. You only really hear about the success stories, and you're always going to hear like now is tougher. But if this is something you're passionate about and you want to go through the journey of betting, then no, there's no reason to tell someone, hey, don't do this anymore. It's gotten tougher. It's, if you want a sports bet, you find your path, you find a journey for you, and you work at it. And eventually, maybe the great riches are gone. Maybe not. Maybe there'll be new opportunities. Look, they invented exchanges. It's a brand new thing. It's, predicting the future, and there's opportunities to make money. So you never know.
Can we get China on here to see if you had a Ukrainian soccer future, if that got voided, would that be a bad break?
Well, I mean, these sorts of things happen like during COVID. I think so. Let's say the Turkish soccer league, it was 2/3 of the way through the season, and the rest of the season didn't get played. And the team that was in first, I believe it was Trabzonspor, ended up still getting the league title, but they were so far ahead, like they were going to win. It is possible that the Turkish Super League could have just said, this season is void, it doesn't count, we didn't get to finish it. So if anybody had a Trabzonspor ticket, do you think that would be a bad beat? I think that would be an example.
How the hell do you know who was in first place of the Turkish soccer league? Did you have that bet?
No, I follow European soccer very closely, and because it was the first time in a very long time Trabzonspor, had won the league, and it was a big story because the fans were panicking because they were like, "You better not vote. Like we haven't won in X amount of years. Like you better still count this season." Essentially.
Yeah, I forgot that garbage sport, they don't do the playoffs either. So, I forgot that we had to deal with that whole, European nonsense. So, yeah, you're right. I guess, I'll go ahead and award it to them.
Yeah. I feel like it would be a pretty bad beat in that instance, by the way. We'll see if China agrees because they were in first by a lot. Anyways, final comment from the previous week's show. Brady Springe. This is a comment a lot of people had. Jacob's mic versus Knish camera angle. Who wins in a fight? So, Last week, I had the wrong microphone connected. Hopefully, sorry, the issue with the microphone. I ended up having the wrong microphone used for the final product that we put out, which was horrifying to me as a producer who's in charge of making sure it sounds okay. But Knish, your camera angle was your phone, I think, that was like balanced against your computer, whatever at work. I have to say, I've seen Knish with far worse. So for me, he showed up on time. It sounded okay. I could see him. I thought that was A-okay to move forward with.
So there's two threads. Like I could have used, I was in Joey corporate. So one thing had to give, right? Either the microphone was going to be trash, which I've done before, or the camera angle was going to be bad. So we sacrificed the camera because not everybody watches this on, YouTube.
Even for video, audio is more important than the visual. So
yeah. So we went with the audio there. I'll try, if I end up there again, that situation, try and prop it up a little differently.
In fairness, we usually record by the time you get home from work. We decided as a collective to go a bit earlier, so maybe you just weren't as prepared because of that. I'll help you out a little bit there. But I mean, I was just surprised. I thought the comments were going to be how bad I sounded. Everyone's like, that was fine. What I can't stand is this camera angle. But you'll be happy to see that today the camera angle is correct in his house. But we can keep going with the show. Up to the next topic coming from @holy_Moses7. So interesting story that built up through prediction markets here. He says this account was created 40 minutes ago. He already had a 160K position on a U.S. airstrike on Iran today. This is the only market he is betting on. Does he know something? And it's Mutual Delta on Polymarket. That was the user. And a quote tweet said, "We've entered the age of information laundering. Bet 22K on yes. Wait for the news to go around. Copy traders floor the trade. Polymarket accounts share it. Once the trade hits 50%, throw 100K plus on no. Lose 20K to make 100K." Now, in the end, there was not a U.S. strike on Iran. This specific user, Mutual Delta, ended up losing $40,000. However, it is possible that this account lost money, but there are other accounts with this user that were winning. So it's difficult to say. It's difficult to see what was actually at play here, but it's very interesting. You look antsy, Mike, but Porter has requested first. I'm gonna allow him to go before we get to you.
Well, I mean, luckily this happened on Polymarket and not Kalshi. So all I can say to these like crypto bot guys, welcome to sports betting.
All right.
People bet one side and go the other side. These guys think the wheel is being invented every other week when they see something over here. It's actually crazy to see this, where it's just like they're so shocked, they're so surprised because they're so confident that they know what's going on. There's like this crazy mismatch of like knowledge and confidence that you see a lot of these like Twitter people displaying.
Go ahead, Mike.
We'll have to, maybe we cut this if this is not allowed, So there was two different markets that my friend was betting into. He saw that there was way more liquidity on will Taylor Swift get pregnant in before 2025 than will she get pregnant before she was married. He may have tried to pump one of the markets up to a super high percentage in hopes that somebody would see it, think there was inside information, and start betting the one with higher liquidity would then change where their percentage was in order to like get a good price of that, sell out, do some arbitrage in that way. It didn't work out for him. He lost quite a bit of money on it. But so I could say pretty confidently that people are trying to do these sorts of things. So my guess is that this U.S.-Iran person saw the stuff about Venezuela and was like, I can head fake markets. And maybe he did, maybe he didn't.
We actually talked about this on the Monday show in regards to it was the conversation around like the pizzas being ordered to the Pentagon. But I was like, somebody could fake this. Somebody is able to fake this stuff. And now that people are like starting to become privy to, this is starting to move here, maybe I need to start betting it as well. Now we're just at a point, I don't think we're quite at an equilibrium, but we might be getting close to that where you almost can't even bite on this sort of news because you have to gauge whether or not there's any truth to it. That seems to be part of the game now with these prediction markets.
When you guys were talking about the pizza and you were talking about somebody's tracking the pizza, somebody could order pizzas to a different place in order. That was like the Vince McMahon meme. I was listening to it. I was like, oh, to fake the pizza order?
Fucking order a shit ton of pizza and head fake a market.
That's what this industry should be about. That's the real good stuff.
Why predict
deltas
20K? Why predict 20K into the market when you can buy $20,000 worth of pizza and then bet the other way, and you have pizza now?
We need Greeks. We need all these, we need Black Scholes for prediction markets. No, we need somebody ordering pizzas to a random location in order to influx dominoes to trick everyone. I think that's what prediction markets are meant to be, to me at least.
Maybe there will be an influx in random pizzas arriving at the Pentagon. They're like, we didn't order this. Just somebody's fucking sending it over there. Knish, any thoughts from you on this topic?
I mean, I will say, are we entering that era where, you're like so many people. I would love the ins and outs of this. And then as it says, if you're you have the strategy to be able to, this reminds me a little bit of the live dog Luke, where he was doing the thing where the player was out and then it changes the line. Where if you're sophisticated enough, and this is at the the highest level of the game, to have an account that's gonna then dump 100,000, 50,000, 100,000 into a market, then use some other accounts to aggregate it, to then come back on the other side. Occam's razor is, no, that's probably didn't happen. This guy just thought Iran was going to strike and lost money. But I love that, there's always that, since you never know, that kind of strategy, conspiracy behind it of are people now going the other way on it? So the endless strategy of markets.
And on the live dog Luke topic that you had there, so what he was doing was he was making fake beat reporter accounts in the hopes that one of the bot accounts that takes that information and says this player is now questionable for this game in an attempt to move a line. Allegedly, he got an unabated bot to pick it up and got, I think it was a college football line move from a 7.5 to a 7 that he wanted to bet. And I think
I was part of that movement. So
okay.
My dog Luke got me.
Oh, really?
Yep.
You got. So now that's why your radar's up when we talk about something like this, because you don't want to get bit in the other direction. And then when you tried it, at least
it didn't work. Yeah, I'm on the wrong side of all of this. I did actually.
Or your friend.
When my friend tried it with Taylor
dog.
Swift, it was not as good. But I actually have done something. Actually, never mind. Let's go on. Next up.
Well, before we go to the next topic, the National College Football Championship is nearly here, and we got something special coming with the hammer on the Hit the Books channel. It just so happens we have the co-host on the channel here. Knish, tell us what we can expect from you and Brad Powers.
Monday, January 19th, the granddaddy of them all, the Natty, the National Championship game, Indiana versus Miami at the Hard Rock, baby. Come join us Monday for the HTB Hit the Books mega show, mega preview as we lead into the game. 5 o'clock Monday. Me and the Godfather of CFB, Brad Powers. We might have a few guests coming on to jump on it. We preview the game. We got props. We got the full slate going forward. Monday, we lead you in to the final game of the CFB season, the Natty, the one you don't want to miss. We'll see you Monday. Hit the Books live at 5, baby.
Great promo, as always, from Knish. You can go to the Hit the Books channel by going to the link in the description right now. Make sure you're subscribed over there. Don't miss out on that show. That's 5 p.m. Eastern time on Monday. But 2 more topics on the show today. Next one, we come to the Oddsjam lawsuit that was initially talked about in December of 2024, saying that Swish Analytics has sued rival odds makers Oddsjam and Optic Odds in San Francisco Superior Court, alleging that they misappropriated Swish's proprietary sports betting odds information directly off its clients' websites and sold access to that info, causing $100 million plus in damages. Database Bets quote tweeted at the time and said, well, this is interesting, especially coming right after the massive Oddsjam sale. I'm going to watch football now, but we'll come back to this if we ever get a link to an actual complaint filing. none seems to exist yet. Well, just over a year later, we revisit the topic here. He says, about a year ago, Swish Analytics sued Oddsjam seeking $100 million damages. Last month, a judge allowed this case to proceed. Still a long way to go here, but would have been nice if the case was thrown out. So this is now proceeding and provides some interesting little dilemma here for Oddsjam. So I wanted to start with you, first of all, on this one, Knish. What are your thoughts on it? How do you feel about all this?
I got to be honest with you. I don't fully understand the case here. I get the, like the hot news theory and that of like, it seems like they took kind of what I would deem as non-proprietary feeds that were scraped and gone in, and used it for their product to then get that. The problem being, which I think is what database is kind of alluding to, is if this then makes you liable in a court of law for damages, does that kind of ruin the scraping industry, for any odds board out there, where then the only way you would have any odds screens is direct legal binding agreements between the odds screen and the sports book, which is quite tough to acquire and also quite expensive, which could in turn either one, you won't have odds screens anymore, you won't have public odds screens, or two, the cost would then, go up incrementally. I don't see the actual case here, how this is what they did, but I agree with you that it probably, even though, don't get me wrong, would kind of be a LOL to see Oddsjam, bang, right, based on who's involved in that company. I don't think that's good for the system.
Yeah, because the reason I kind of discussed this because it seems like a very large precedent here, because if they rule in Swish Analytics' favor, which I also agree seems unlikely, you're right. How would we have these competing odds tools? Would it just go back to you have to just do it manually and go from sportsbook to sportsbook? Porter, any thoughts from you on this?
Yeah, so most people who are on top, I think they should be excited about stuff like this, actually, because chaos usually should favor the people that are better prepared or understand what might be coming. Not that I think it's any way possible that a judge will in the end rule in their favor, but effectively, really, this just, and then if you look at who tweeted it, some of the people who responded underneath, arbors and people who like screens lighting up a certain color, kind of telling them which button to push, they're gone. There's no on screens for them to do this. So this would cause a lot of chaos, I think, in the industry if it ever actually happened, where effectively the final stage of this is that there are no on screens.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm feeling as well. But how about you, Mike? What are your thoughts?
I guess would the difference be that Swish is selling this information, so it's proprietary info, compared to Caesars is not claiming that this is proprietary. It's just something that they, offer to clients essentially. I don't know if there's some kind of difference in the offerings because, Caesars isn't selling their lines, but then I guess you could say the third party providers to Caesars, do sell their lines. So you're effectively scraping through them. I don't know. This is well beyond my pay grade. I think that no odd screen, like Porter said, actually probably for if you're really invested in this might not be people are oh my God, an odd screen that will disappear. You'll figure it out if you really need to figure it out. But Johnny, who's kind of arbing on the side, is probably not. So
right.
I don't know. Maybe it's a good opportunity for those at the top of the game. Bad for guys who are just arbing on Saturdays, the Oddsjam crew. Rest in peace.
All right. Last topic for the show today comes from the Philly Godfather. Says in his Twitter bio, professional sports bettor. He's gone head-to-head. He's butted heads, I guess, with Rob Pizzola, CEO of The Hammer, on many occasions in the past. But he said the day you stop trying to hit grand slams daily in sports betting market, parentheses, crazy parlays, and concentrate on base hits, hypothetically, or metaphorically, excuse me, is the day you start turning a profit in this business. Treat sports betting as a business. Work hard, do your research, and watch your profits go. For the last topic here, Porter, let's get your thoughts first.
Yeah, so it's advice from Philly Godfather, so obviously, but he's trying to basically say something that kind of makes sense. But what I really wanted to harp on was the last sentence. Because all like the other nonsense that, is going on there is mostly like baloney, tooting his own horn. But I love the idea that sports betting, wow, what he means his business is like touting BS and selling picks. That's what he's working on. But the idea that sports betting is something other than just opening a model and clicking a button, that there's lots of work and different things you need to do. I love that component. I love that message, even though I'm not really sure he means it the way that I'm trying to explain it. But in general, this should be eye-opening to so many users who are out here trying to do something in this industry, and they don't really get that it's just like anything else in life. If your goal is to do something substantial, it's a business first. And if you're really trying to make the big bucks, treat it as work. Treat it as you are doing something where you're putting in effort, you're putting in the time, and good luck out there. It's not about trying to hit home, grand slams like he said here.
Speaking of treating like a business, we've got Mike with the whiteboard in the background again. Everyone's got a role in the whole cog of the machine that you're involved in, it seems. So I think you'd agree with what Porter was saying.
Yeah, Philly Godfather is backing ass backwards into whatever. It's not like he is. Porter sees it because he does it every day. Philly Godfather is trying to portray what a winning bettor would say. So that is kind of the difference between the two. But of course, if you're going to make this your job, then make it your job. So I think that anyone who's trying to earn off this, you're not going to earn off this not working at it, not actually if you want the income of a job, then you have to treat it like a job as far as hours and work and everything like that. So, yeah, he obviously is, again, I want to be careful about who I'm praising here and what he's saying, but yeah, he did back his way into this one.
Knish, finally to you. We don't maybe don't need to hear any more on like the business side of it, but maybe let's hear about the Philly Godfather as a bigger
well, I was
veteran
gonna say
space.
I can't believe I'm backing up like two straight people here on the panel that could not were just foaming at the mouth to give Philly Godfather his props there and just lathering him up. This point doesn't even make any I've known people get Isaac on here round robin. That's always going for major scores. There's multiple ways to skin a scat. Yes, over the long term, yeah, if you're betting straights and that's usually up. But I mean, there's been people out there where they found glitches. I mean, even the pick six story, which didn't pay out for a lot of people, but that's considered a grand slam where if you were able to get in and get your money out. So I don't agree with the whole thing there. It's just hey, I sell straight. It's also a very this is something you would expect to hear from somebody who's in the industry that's 55 years old or something like that. It's a very old school, gotta go, don't forget your no parlays, you're winning better than that. So yeah, I'm not going to give this any credit.
Seems like
to Joey's point, I actually ironically have kind of shifted over the past few maybe 6 months, maybe past year, to betting higher variant stuff and more parlays, long shots, really diving into it. So I guess I don't actually listen to what the Godfather suggests here, but he's the one man trying to bring testosterone back into sports betting. So I have to stick up for him there, and end this nonsense that Jared Smith's fighting against.
I was going to add something, but I think that's the perfect way to end off this episode of Circle Back. So we will end it off there. Thank you so much for watching, listening. If you did enjoy, please make sure you hit the like button. Consider rating and reviewing 5 stars. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on YouTube, consider subscribing. We do lots of great content here on Circles Off, and we're going to continue to do that through the rest of 2026. So we hope you're involved. As always, though, we will see you again next time.